Hey guys, it's Godbars here, the self-proclaimed hip-hop historian, and this is the 198th episode of my series where I grab a vinyl from my collection, talk about why I love it, what influence it has, and what its place is in the grand scheme of hip-hop. While Del the Funky Homosapien isn't exactly new to the channel, I haven't covered any of his solo projects up until this point. So today I wanted to discuss his revolutionary debut, 1991's I Wish My Brother George Was Here. Dell may have found his sound a bit more on his sophomore project, 1993's No Need for Alarm, but he would explore even further later on in his career. Although unfortunately, there's a number of those revolutionary solo LPs that I don't have on vinyl yet. However, I did already discuss the debut Hieroglyphics album, 1998's Third Eye Vision, as well as 93 Till Infinity by Souls of Mischief and Deltron 3030. And there's plenty of other Hyro related classics that I'll get to in due time on the channel, like Casual Spear itself. But with this album, Del the Funky Homosapien came out the gate swinging, with his debut selling hundreds of thousands of records, despite him not really having an established name yet. Though obviously the involvement of a rising star in the form of his cousin Ice Cube didn't exactly hurt. I've known about the relation between these two ever since I first learned about hieroglyphics back in middle school, but I always found it interesting how both had a massive impact on California hip-hop, but the styles and sounds that each one specialized in couldn't have been more different. While both may have had an affinity for sampling funk music, the way the two went about actually executing and incorporating funk into the final product was nothing alike, with Cube further pioneering the gangster rap and G-funk scenes, and Del setting the tone for the more underground, alternative, and artistic movements, alongside fellow collectives like Project Blowed or Liquid Crew. Something I and many others didn't realize for years was that the public perception of this album title was mistaken, as it turns out the usual explanation of I Wish My Brother George Was Here being in reference to George Clinton was a concept reverse engineered by Ice Cube after Del had already came up with the title. They were both giant fans of Parliament, so this worked out, but in reality Del got the phrase from an old Looney Tunes episode, where even then the Bugs Bunny quote where he says, "I wish my brother George was here," is actually in reference to Liberace, and the old catchphrase he would use. And personally, I always think it's pretty fun to learn the origin of certain ideas or concepts, as it can usually give you some insight into the artist and their preferences. I also think Del the Funky Homosapien really couldn't feasibly have had a more perfect voice for rapping, and while his content and the game around him changed and evolved drastically over the years, his trademark iconic voice and delivery was undeniable from the very first project. It isn't just how Del raps that makes him so special, though. He's always been a very sly and witty lyricist, and that's no exception when it comes to his solo debut here. The way this dude was crafting his verses was so ahead of the curve, especially for 1991, and the way he blended it with relatable comedic premises like being annoyed with friends who virtually live on your couch because they either can't or won't figure out their own living situations. It's also worth mentioning that even past his musical and overall cultural influence, Del had a pretty sizable impact on alternative fashion as well, especially for hip-hop, because to my knowledge, there really weren't many, if any, rappers with the type of punk sensibilities he had in the early 90s. I want to share some of my favorite moments to come off this legendary debut, and I chose to delve into a couple of the dope verses that pop up on the killer track, Ah 1 2, which is definitely a highlight for me on here. The first chunk of bars I want to share with you guys comes when Del says, "I'm chocolate like a bar, but my name is not Roseanne. My skin has a pigment reminiscent of a tan. I plan to grow dreads, but first a nappy fro. The longer the hair, the easier to scare a foe. It grows from my head until it covers up my base. People look and stare when I walk in the place. This is just a taste from the funky human being, ain't no misbehaving, ain't no use for raving, surrounded by the people who would stab me in the back. My skin is really brown even though it's labeled black. Sometimes I wear a cap, sometimes I wear bandanas. Forbidden in LA, but I wear one in Atlanta. I chiseled up a sculpture to complement my culture. Thoughts of silly Nubians is prone to give me ulcers. Hanging with the brothers who are tribal in their ways, for this is how I like to spend my days, and it pays. To steal a groovy sample from the archives, Use my mental staff to eliminate apartheid. One other smaller but equally dope set of lines come at the back end of this same track, where Dell closes it out with suicidal rhymes with apocalyptic tunes. I will drink a seltzer while you dabble with the booze, and giggle when I see your liver shrivel to a prune. I'm the funky human being, not a monkey or a coon. Assume that the style is funkadelic in the 90s. Dell is living fat as I leave a foe behind me. I feel pretty positive that there are some outside voices who show up for guest spots on this thing, especially on the skits, but there aren't any actual features listed, and there isn't too much information on the instrumental side of things either. Since the only names given are Dell himself, Boogeyman, and Ice Cube, though I've kind of always assumed Ice Cube was just like an executive producer overseeing the entire LP's creation. While I already discussed the track at length, I have to name one of my three favorite songs on here as a 1-2, and the other top picks would be Mr. Dabalina and Dr. Bombay. For the honorable mentions that didn't quite make it, I still gotta shout out jams like Ya Lil Crumb Snatches, What Is a Booty, The Wacky World of Rapid Transit, Pissin' on Your Steps, Money for Sex, Sunny Meadows, Sleeping on My Couch, and Hoods Come in Dozens. Thank you for watching my 198th video. Next time we're going to discuss one of the single most forward-thinking and progressive hip-hop albums to come out in 1990. So tune in for that one, and if you enjoyed, be sure to like, subscribe, and let me know what your favorite moments off this Bay Area classic are. Don't forget to have a great day, and I'll see you next time, okay? Alright.
Who would do such a thing? Look, I stand in the flame of a feeling we call pain. Father's Day mug, little hand shaped in clay. Carrier planes flew overhead in pockets.